So the holistic extroverted feeling or harmony, Dario calls the host.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's basically like being a host for the world all the time to some extent. This is really the side of the function that is looking for and scanning for unmet needs, trying to get those needs met, like a host would.
Personal needs.
You got it. Exactly. And the sacrifices don't tend to be the big sacrifices like the analytic. It tends to be a lot of little sacrifices all the time, right? So it's like moment to moment, the willingness to make little sacrifices in behalf of the context or the environment or the people one loves. It's like being a host, right? All the time.
And I think this shows up a lot for FJs, people that use this as a preferred function, in the phrase, okay, I don't agree with what's going on, but I'll just have this say in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like a very tangible way it might show up for you if this is more your style.
Yep, exactly. And it's the receptive extroverted feeling or harmony that is very empathic, right? Because you're receiving that information, you're receiving the emotional information that you're reading off of others, as opposed to the analytic that rolls up their sleeves and gets to work then on making it so everybody's okay, right? Or at least wanting to do that, wanting to shepherd and corral everybody to make sure everything's okay. This is a receptive energy, so it tends to be more sensitive to other people's feelings. And because of that, they can be that can show up as getting one's feelings hurt easily, but it can also show up as being as like not wanting to rock the boat, not wanting to offend anybody, always making sure that the things you say are like the kind thing to say. And so it can lack directness. I mean, it's the receptive version, right? So it's going to lack that assertion. It's maybe going to have a hard time speaking up for itself. And maybe take a lot of hits that it didn't need to, right? The willingness to make lots of sacrifices along with the inability to communicate and articulate when that's happening out of fear of being insensitive can make it so that the holistic version can take a lot of arrows.
And so how this would look for you, if this is your preferred function again, is, man, I'm doing all this emotional labor for everybody. No one's looking out for me. Mm-hmm. They're not even seeing the value I'm adding between the cracks. And it's so emotional, it's so heavy of a lift. Why am I not getting recognized for this? In fact, I'm getting used and I feel resentful and I feel upset. And I don't like the fact that I'm not able to have a reciprocity to the energy that I'm giving out. So I think that's how it shows up in a like if you're trying to identify this in yourself, I think that's how it can feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
By the way, we are starting something very new here at Personality Hacker. Now, you might be listening to this years from now, and so it's something that's gone on for a while. But as of the time of this recording, it's fairly new. We're starting up an experience of our podcast live once a week online in a virtual format. So what we're doing is we're gathering a group of like minds to come together once a week to watch this podcast together. And then right afterward, we have a membership program where people can come. It's called a personality quest. And we talk about the podcast right afterward. We unpack the learning from it, how we can apply it to our lives. And then we give the entire group of people that have gathered an assignment or a challenge for that week, some journal prompts and some reflection, but also a challenge that week to go test out in their real life, to go explore in the world. All of us are going to do the same challenge that week. And we come back the following week, we talk about it, unpack it, and we get the learning from it. And every week getting together to do this, we've already been doing a few weeks. It's been fantastic. I've loved doing it. It's awesome to see people come and gather live to watch the podcast, talk about it, and go do challenges in their own lives. You should be a part of this. If you're listening or you're watching, we want you to be part of it. Currently, we're doing it on Sundays. You can find out more information and be part of Personality Quest if you come over to personalityhacker.com/quest. And you can learn all about the quests and what we're doing there and get yourself involved, because I think you're going to love this experience, especially if you've loved the podcast and you love personality types and personal growth and the intersection of those two things. It's one of the things that I am super excited about going forward with. So, and there's going to be some live elements to that. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that we've got planned around this. But right now we're just starting with these weekly gatherings, and I'd love for you to be involved.
Dario says that they're holding space almost all the time as a host, right? Mentality. He says holding space generally means being present, attentive, but not interfering, ready to help if asked. Imagine living a whole life holding space for others, right? And so it's like it's like an attentiveness. It's like a readiness to help people if at all possible. And so some of the stereotypes we get around extroverted feeling being like endlessly sacrificing is usually more the holistic version. Now, the analytic version will also make sacrifices, but they're usually making big sacrifices, as you mentioned, as a signal, right,
Mhm.
to others and asking other people to make those sacrifices too. The holistic version isn't asking anybody to do that, right? They're just the ones who are making all of the little micro sacrifices all the time, which can be okay, but also can be, death by a thousand cuts. And so the sensitivity, it means like being particularly tuned into social approval as well. So they don't really like to embarrass anybody or be embarrassed. That's very like that's a thing that they're going to do everything they can to avoid. They might even be superficially nice sometimes, or read other people as being superficially nice and not knowing whether or not they meant what they actually said. And they can be kind of caught up in lots of little dramas.
Mhm.
Whereas analytic, extroverted feeling or harmony, if they're going to be embroiled in drama, it's going to be big drama, right? Like big, massive social scale level drama, perhaps. Like maybe, like as a social justice warrior on social media, right? And being embroiled in all of that. Whereas the holistic extroverted feeling is more going to be like having beefs with people like in their life. It's a little bit more like you mentioned before, like the difference between digital and analog. I think we were talking about it in the thinking functions. This is going to be more of an analog version, and it's going to be more tuned into what's really going on in their lives. So there's beautiful things that come from it. That there's that empathy, the sensitivity, the desire to make sure everybody's okay, the willingness to make little sacrifices. But there also can, like you mentioned, there can be a recipe for resentment,
Mhm.
right? And not speaking up for oneself and not handling things, ensuring that there are two-sided relationships, finding themselves in a lot of one-sided relationships, that sort of thing.
Yeah.